God's timing is now. Your soulmate is receiving a divine sign. My beloved child, listen carefully, because sometimes life becomes so quiet that we almost miss the moments that change everything. Don't skip. Stay till the end, because this story may remind you that hope often arrives when we least expect it. There are seasons when two hearts seem separated by distance, fear, unanswered questions, and silent prayers. Days become weeks, weeks become months, and it feels as though nothing is moving. Yet behind the scenes, unseen changes can be taking place inside a person's heart. This is not a promise about your future, but a story about faith, patience, and the mysterious ways people can awaken to what truly matters. Imagine someone who has spent countless nights trying to convince themselves they have moved on. They fill every hour with work, responsibilities, conversations, and distractions, believing that if they stay busy enough, the memories will eventually fade. But every quiet evening tells a different story. Every peaceful sunrise reminds them of a chapter they never truly closed. Every familiar melody carries them back to moments they thought were forgotten. The harder they try to silence those emotions, the louder those emotions become. Something inside them refuses to let go, and they cannot understand why. Listen carefully. There are moments in life when people begin noticing gentle reminders that cause them to pause. A familiar place unexpectedly brings back an old memory. A conversation with a trusted friend encourages honest reflection. A quiet moment of prayer inspires them to look at their life differently. These experiences are not proof of supernatural certainty, but they can become meaningful turning points that awaken gratitude, courage, and self-examination. Sometimes the greatest sign is simply the willingness to stop running from the truth hidden inside the heart. For so long, this person believed that protecting themselves meant hiding every vulnerable emotion. They convinced themselves that silence was strength. They believed that pretending not to care would somehow make the feelings disappear. Instead, every day became heavier than the last. Every smile required more effort. Every celebration felt incomplete because there was still an unanswered question living quietly within them. What if they walked away from something that truly mattered? What if fear made the decision that love never had the chance to make? Stay till the end, because the turning point begins when they finally stop asking everyone else what they should feel and start listening honestly to their own heart. That moment is uncomfortable. It requires courage. It requires humility. It requires admitting that pride has been standing in the way of healing. The walls they built to protect themselves suddenly begin to feel more like a prison than a shelter. They realize they are exhausted from pretending everything is fine. For the first time in a long while, they whisper a simple prayer asking for wisdom, peace, and the courage to take the next right step. Days pass, and something subtle begins to change. They become more patient with themselves. They begin forgiving old mistakes instead of replaying them endlessly. Instead of focusing on what they cannot control, they start paying attention to the person they are becoming. Friends notice they seem calmer. Family notices they are more thoughtful. Even their outlook begins to soften. They discover that healing rarely happens all at once. It comes through many small choices that slowly transform a person's heart. This changes everything. They realize that love cannot grow where fear rules every decision. They understand that genuine relationships require honesty, respect, forgiveness, and courage. They stop chasing perfect timing according to their own plans and begin trusting that meaningful things often unfold gradually. Rather than demanding immediate answers, they learn to appreciate each lesson that prepares them for whatever comes next. That change in perspective becomes the greatest gift they have received in years. Meanwhile, somewhere beyond their awareness, another heart is also growing. Another person is learning lessons about patience, compassion, accountability, and hope. Neither journey is identical, yet both are shaped by moments of reflection and personal growth. They may never realize that their paths have been developing in parallel until the right conversation finally takes place. Sometimes the distance between two people is not measured in miles but in the healing each person still needs to experience before they can truly understand one another. Listen carefully. The most powerful breakthroughs often arrive quietly. They are not always dramatic. They are not always announced with grand signs or extraordinary events. Sometimes the greatest miracle is simply finding the courage to forgive, to apologize sincerely, to release bitterness, or to speak with kindness after a long period of silence. Those moments can transform lives because they change the direction of the heart. As this story continues, the person begins remembering not only the beautiful memories but also the mistakes they made. Instead of blaming circumstances or other people, they honestly examine their own actions. They recognize words left unsaid, opportunities missed, and fears that influenced important choices. This reflection does not fill them with shame. Instead, it gives them clarity. They realize that growth begins when excuses end. Every new morning now carries a different feeling. The future no longer appears as something to fear but as something to prepare for. They become more intentional with their words. More generous with their patience. More willing to listen than to argue. These changes do not happen because someone forced them to change. They happen because the heart finally became willing to learn. Don't skip this final thought, because it may be the most important part of the entire story. Whether relationships are restored or new chapters begin, lasting peace comes from becoming the kind of person who leads with integrity, compassion, and faith. We cannot control another person's choices, but we can choose how we respond, how we grow, and how we love. Sometimes what feels like waiting is actually preparation. Sometimes what feels like silence is an invitation to grow stronger. And sometimes the moment we stop trying to force every answer is the moment we discover that hope has been quietly growing all along. If this story reminds you of your own journey, let it encourage you to keep moving forward with wisdom rather than fear, patience rather than panic, and faith rather than despair. Trust that every season has a purpose. Continue becoming the best version of yourself. Keep your heart open, your spirit humble, and your hope alive. Because while no one can promise exactly what tomorrow holds, every new day offers another opportunity for healing, forgiveness, courage, and love, and sometimes that is the beginning of a beautiful new chapter. My beloved child, don't skip this moment, because the story is only beginning to unfold. Stay till the end, because something huge is waiting for you. While you have been wondering whether anything is changing behind the scenes, your special person has been experiencing moments they cannot explain. They wake up with your name unexpectedly crossing their mind. They find themselves reflecting on conversations they once dismissed, searching for meaning in words they barely noticed before. The more they try to convince themselves that these thoughts will disappear, the more persistent they become. It is as though every quiet moment gently invites them to examine the condition of their own heart. One evening, after another restless day, they finally stopped trying to outrun their emotions. They found a quiet place, closed their eyes, and whispered a heartfelt prayer. It was not a perfect prayer filled with impressive words. It was simple, honest, and deeply personal. They asked God for wisdom instead of certainty. They asked for peace instead of confusion. They asked for the courage to recognize truth wherever it might lead. In that moment, something shifted, not because every answer suddenly appeared, but because they became willing to let go of the fear that had controlled them for so long. Listen carefully. Sometimes the greatest change begins the very moment someone stops demanding immediate solutions and starts trusting that growth takes time. Your special person began noticing how every challenge they had faced was teaching them something valuable. Every disappointment had made them more compassionate. Every season of silence had taught them patience. Every mistake had revealed an opportunity to become wiser. Slowly, they realized that the person they were becoming mattered just as much as the future they hoped for. That understanding filled them with a quiet confidence they had never experienced before. As the days passed, familiar memories returned with unexpected clarity. They remembered the kindness they had once overlooked. They remembered the encouragement they had received when they needed it most. They remembered moments of laughter that had carried them through difficult seasons. Instead of bringing pain, those memories began inspiring gratitude. They no longer saw the past only through the lens of regret. They began seeing it as a collection of lessons that had prepared them for the next chapter of their life. What happened next changed everything, because gratitude opened a door that fear had kept firmly closed. Don't skip, because this part is important. Your special person realized they could no longer blame circumstances for every missed opportunity. They understood that healing required honesty. They admitted where pride had spoken louder than humility. They acknowledged where fear had prevented sincere conversations. Instead of hiding from those truths, they accepted them with courage. That honesty did not weaken them, it strengthened them. It became the foundation upon which genuine change could finally begin. Meanwhile, life continued moving forward in ordinary ways, yet everything felt different inside them. Simple moments suddenly carried greater meaning. A sunrise reminded them that every new day offers another chance to begin again. A quiet evening became an invitation to reflect instead of worrying about yesterday. Conversations with loved ones encouraged them to value relationships more deeply than before. They discovered that true peace is not found by controlling every outcome but by faithfully taking the next right step, even when the destination remains unseen. Stay till the end, because the most remarkable part of this journey has not yet arrived. Your special person is no longer asking whether they should change. Now they are asking how they can live with greater integrity, compassion, and faith. They understand that love is more than emotion. It is expressed through patience, humility, forgiveness, honesty, and the willingness to grow. Every lesson they have learned is quietly preparing them for conversations they once believed would never happen. The courage they have been building in silence is slowly becoming stronger than every fear that once held them back. Now imagine the moment when two stories, shaped by separate seasons of growth, begin moving toward the same point once again. Neither journey has been easy. Both have included uncertainty, waiting, and lessons that could not be rushed. Yet every experience has been shaping character rather than simply passing time. If there is one thing this story reminds us, it is that meaningful change often happens long before anyone else can see it. The greatest transformations begin within the heart, where no crowd can applaud and no audience can observe. Listen carefully, my beloved child, because this changes everything. Sometimes God's timing is not about making events happen faster. Sometimes it is about preparing hearts so that when the right opportunity arrives, people are ready to respond with wisdom instead of fear. Keep walking forward with hope. Keep choosing kindness over bitterness, faith over despair, and patience over panic. The chapter ahead has not yet been written, but every step of growth you take today prepares you for whatever tomorrow may bring. And that is why this story is far from over. My beloved child, listen carefully, because the next chapter unfolds in the quiet places where no one else is looking. Don't skip. Stay till the end, because what happened inside your special person's heart could become the turning point they never expected. They have begun noticing that the peace they have been searching for does not come from controlling every outcome. Instead, it comes from surrendering their fears, admitting their weaknesses, and trusting that every season, even the painful ones, has been shaping them into someone stronger, wiser, and more compassionate. The questions that once filled their mind every waking hour have slowly become prayers, and those prayers have begun changing them from the inside out. Every morning now feels different. Before the noise of the world reaches them, they pause for a moment of quiet reflection. They think about the choices they have made, the words they wish they could take back, and the opportunities they allowed to pass because fear convinced them to remain silent. Rather than running from those memories, they allow them to teach valuable lessons. They are beginning to understand that regret can either become a lifelong burden or the beginning of genuine transformation. That realization has filled their heart with a determination they have never felt before. This changes everything because they are no longer living as the person they used to be. Listen carefully. There are moments when they suddenly remember your kindness at the most unexpected times. A familiar smile from a stranger reminds them of your warmth. A quiet conversation brings back your wisdom. A simple act of generosity reminds them of the compassion you once showed without expecting anything in return. These memories no longer arrive as painful reminders of what was lost. Instead, they become invitations to grow into someone capable of giving that same kindness to others. They realize that the greatest relationships are built not on perfection but on humility, forgiveness, and the willingness to keep learning. One evening, while watching the sky slowly change from daylight into darkness, they whispered another prayer. This time it was different. They were no longer asking for every answer. They were asking for the strength to accept whatever tomorrow might bring. They prayed for courage to speak truth with kindness. They prayed for wisdom to recognize opportunities for reconciliation. They prayed that their heart would remain open instead of becoming hardened by disappointment. As they finished that prayer, an unexpected sense of peace settled over them. It did not erase every uncertainty, but it reminded them that hope can exist even when every question has not yet been answered. Stay till the end because the journey is reaching another important moment. Over the following days, people around them began noticing subtle changes. They smiled more sincerely. They listened more carefully. They became slower to judge and quicker to understand. Their family saw a gentleness that had not been present for a long time. Friends noticed a quiet confidence replacing the anxiety they once carried. Without realizing it, they had become living proof that inner change often appears gradually, one faithful step at a time. What happened next changed everything because they finally recognized that healing is not measured by how quickly pain disappears but by how deeply love transforms the heart. Then came a conversation they never expected. Someone asked them a simple question: if you had one chance to make peace with your past, would you take it? The question lingered in their thoughts long after the conversation ended. It echoed through every quiet moment. They realized the answer had been waiting inside them all along. Yes, they would choose peace over pride. Yes, they would choose honesty over fear. Yes, they would choose growth over regret. That decision became the beginning of a new chapter. Not because every circumstance changed overnight, but because their heart finally did. My beloved child, never underestimate what God can do with a heart that is willing to grow. Sometimes the greatest miracle is not an instant change in circumstances but the slow and beautiful transformation of a person's character. Every lesson they have learned has prepared them for this season. Every challenge has strengthened their faith. Every setback has quietly shaped their compassion. They are becoming someone who values truth more than appearances, peace more than proving themselves right, and love more than fear. Don't skip this final moment, because something huge is waiting just beyond the horizon of this story. The journey is not ending here. It is entering a new season filled with opportunities to choose forgiveness instead of resentment, courage instead of hesitation, and hope instead of despair. Whatever tomorrow brings, they now understand one life-changing truth. God's timing is not rushed, and it is never wasted. Every step, every delay, every lesson has been preparing them for a future they could not yet see. And as they continue walking forward in faith, they discover that the greatest blessing was never simply reaching the destination, it was becoming the person they were meant to be along the way. My beloved child, listen carefully, because the story has reached a place where everything begins to feel different. Don't skip. Stay till the end, because what is happening now is not about dramatic moments that everyone can see. It is about the quiet transformation that takes place when a heart becomes willing to let go of old fears and embrace a new way of living. Your special person has reached a season where they can no longer hide behind excuses. They have realized that every unanswered question has been inviting them to grow rather than remain stuck. Instead of asking why certain chapters unfolded the way they did, they have started asking what those experiences were teaching them. That single change in perspective has opened a door they never expected to walk through. There are moments when they sit alone in complete silence, not because they are lonely, but because they have discovered that silence often reveals what constant noise conceals. During those quiet moments, they think about every crossroads that shaped their journey. They remember opportunities they embraced with confidence and moments they allowed fear to steal from them. Rather than condemning themselves for past mistakes, they are learning to receive those memories with grace. They understand now that wisdom is often born from reflection, and compassion grows strongest in hearts that have experienced both failure and forgiveness. What once felt like a heavy burden has slowly become a source of strength, reminding them that every difficult season can produce lasting growth. Listen carefully, because another important lesson has begun to take root within them. They have realized that genuine love is never sustained by pride, control, or constant certainty. It grows through patience, honesty, humility, and the willingness to serve others with kindness. This understanding has changed the way they speak, the way they listen, and even the way they pray. They no longer ask only for their own desires to be fulfilled. Instead, they ask for wisdom to become a blessing wherever life leads them. They pray for courage to forgive quickly, for peace during uncertain seasons, and for strength to remain faithful even when the road ahead is not completely visible. Those simple prayers are quietly reshaping the foundation of their heart. As the days continue, they begin noticing beauty in ordinary moments that once seemed insignificant. The warmth of the morning sun reminds them that every day begins with fresh mercy. The gentle sound of rain becomes a reminder that even storms can nourish new life. A kind conversation with a stranger reminds them that small acts of compassion can change someone's entire day. Every experience becomes an opportunity to recognize gratitude instead of focusing on what is missing. This changes everything because their heart is no longer controlled by disappointment. Hope has slowly become stronger than discouragement, and faith has become louder than fear. Stay till the end, because another chapter is quietly unfolding. One evening, while reading words of encouragement from Scripture, they paused over a simple truth: waiting is not always a delay, sometimes it is preparation. Those words remained with them long after they closed the book. They reflected on every season that once felt empty and began seeing it differently. Perhaps those seasons were never meaningless after all. Perhaps they were learning patience, developing character, and discovering a deeper dependence on God. Instead of viewing those months as lost time, they began seeing them as part of a greater story that was shaping them into someone more compassionate, more mature, and more faithful. From that day forward, their outlook continued changing in remarkable ways. They became quicker to encourage others and slower to criticize. They found joy in helping people without expecting recognition. They discovered that peace does not depend on having every answer but on trusting God one step at a time. Family members noticed the calmness in their voice. Friends saw a confidence that no longer depended on circumstances. The people around them could sense that something inside had changed, even if they could not explain exactly what it was. True transformation often speaks louder through actions than through words. My beloved child, never forget that some of the greatest chapters of life begin long before anyone else notices them. Seeds grow beneath the soil before they ever break through the surface. Dawn begins while the world is still covered in darkness. In the same way, lasting change often begins quietly inside the heart. Keep walking faithfully through every season. Keep choosing forgiveness over resentment, humility over pride, and hope over despair. Every act of kindness, every sincere prayer, and every faithful step matters more than you realize. Although the road ahead may still hold unexpected twists and unanswered questions, you can continue moving forward with confidence, knowing that growth is never wasted. And as this journey continues, an even deeper lesson is waiting just beyond the next chapter, one that will reveal that the greatest gift was never simply reaching a destination, but becoming the person God was shaping all along. My beloved child, listen carefully, because the story is entering a chapter that many people overlook. Don't skip. Stay till the end, because something profound is unfolding, not in loud announcements or dramatic displays, but in the quiet decisions that slowly reshape a person's life. Your special person has begun to understand that God's work often starts within the heart long before it becomes visible to the eyes. They are discovering that every season of waiting carried a purpose they could not recognize at the time. Every unanswered prayer taught them perseverance. Every closed door taught them trust. Every difficult goodbye taught them the value of grace. Looking back now, they realize they were never truly abandoned. They were being prepared. There are evenings when they sit by themselves and reflect on how much they have changed. They remember the version of themselves that constantly worried about tomorrow, chased certainty, and allowed fear to speak louder than faith. That person still feels familiar, yet also strangely distant. They can see how every challenge slowly refined their character. They understand now that true strength is not pretending to have no fears, it is choosing to move forward even while those fears exist. That quiet courage has become one of the greatest gifts they have received, and it continues growing stronger with every passing day. Listen carefully, because something unexpected begins happening in their relationships with other people. They become more patient with those who misunderstand them. They become slower to react in anger and quicker to offer compassion. Instead of trying to win every argument, they begin seeking peace. Instead of proving themselves right, they choose humility. These small changes may seem ordinary, but together they reveal a heart that is being transformed. People around them notice a gentleness they had never seen before. They cannot explain it, but they recognize that something beautiful is taking place beneath the surface. One morning, while watching the first light of dawn spread across the sky, they were reminded that every sunrise arrives at the appointed time. No one can force it to come earlier, and no darkness can prevent it from arriving when the moment is right. That simple reflection filled them with hope. They realized they had spent too much of their life trying to rush seasons that needed time to mature. From that moment forward, they decided to trust the process instead of fighting against it. This changes everything because peace finally replaced the constant pressure to control every outcome. Stay till the end, because another lesson was waiting for them. They began understanding that forgiveness is not simply about releasing someone else, it is also about setting their own heart free. They quietly forgave people who never apologized. They released disappointments they had carried for years. They stopped allowing yesterday's wounds to dictate today's choices. It was not easy, and it did not happen overnight, but each act of forgiveness made their heart a little lighter. They discovered that healing often begins with decisions no one else can see. As the weeks continued, they noticed that their prayers had changed. Instead of asking only for answers, they began asking for wisdom. Instead of asking only for blessings, they prayed to become a blessing to others. Instead of asking for an easier life, they asked for a stronger faith. Those quiet prayers slowly reshaped the direction of their journey. They no longer measured success by how quickly circumstances changed. They measured it by the peace, kindness, and integrity that were growing within them each day. My beloved child, never underestimate what God can accomplish through ordinary moments. A gentle conversation can restore hope. A sincere apology can begin healing. A simple act of kindness can change the course of someone's day. A quiet prayer offered in faith can strengthen a weary heart. These small moments often become the foundation for extraordinary stories. The world celebrates dramatic victories, but heaven also rejoices in humble acts of love, mercy, and faithfulness that no audience ever applauds. Don't skip this final moment, because the next chapter is closer than you think. Your special person is no longer living only for what they want to receive, they are learning how to live for what they can faithfully become. Their heart has been softened, their perspective has been renewed, and their faith has grown deeper through every trial they have faced. They now understand that God's timing is not measured by human impatience but by perfect wisdom. Every delay, every lesson, every season has shaped them into someone ready for the future God has prepared. And just beyond this chapter lies another turning point, one that will test everything they have learned and reveal how much they have truly grown. The story is still unfolding, and the greatest lessons may still be waiting ahead. My beloved child, listen carefully, because this chapter reaches deeper than anything that has come before. Don't skip. Stay till the end, because the greatest changes rarely begin with extraordinary events. They begin with a single decision to trust God even when the road ahead cannot be fully seen. Your special person has reached a place where they finally understand that every season of uncertainty was preparing them for a stronger faith. Looking back, they can now see that what once appeared to be unanswered prayers often became unexpected blessings. The doors that remained closed protected them from paths they were never meant to follow. The delays that once frustrated them quietly strengthened their patience. Every difficult chapter became part of a testimony they are only beginning to understand. Late one evening, after the world had grown quiet, they found themselves reflecting on how much they had changed. They remembered the countless nights they spent searching for immediate answers, trying to force solutions before the right time had arrived. They smiled gently, realizing that if everything had happened according to their own plans, they would never have become the person they are today. Every disappointment had refined their character. Every challenge had deepened their compassion. Every moment of waiting had taught them that God's wisdom reaches far beyond human understanding. That thought filled them with peace unlike anything they had experienced before. Listen carefully, because something remarkable begins happening inside them. Fear no longer controls every decision they make. Anxiety no longer speaks louder than hope. They have discovered that courage is not the absence of uncertainty but the willingness to keep walking faithfully despite it. Every morning they rise with a quieter heart and a clearer purpose. Instead of worrying about tomorrow, they choose to be faithful today. Instead of dwelling on yesterday's regrets, they focus on today's opportunities to show kindness, patience, and grace. This changes everything because their life is no longer driven by panic but by purpose. As they continue their journey, they begin noticing people entering their life who encourage their faith instead of feeding their fears. Conversations become more meaningful. Friendships become more genuine. They realize that God often places the right people in our path during the seasons when we need wisdom the most. These people do not have all the answers, but they remind them to keep trusting, to keep praying, and to keep moving forward one faithful step at a time. Their heart begins to understand that no season of growth was ever meant to be walked through completely alone. Stay till the end, because another beautiful lesson is waiting. One quiet morning, while reading words of hope, they paused and realized that love is not simply something we hope to receive. Love is something we are called to reflect through every choice we make. From that day forward, they began treating others with greater patience. They became quicker to forgive, slower to judge, and more willing to extend compassion where they once would have held resentment. Without even noticing, they had become an example of the very transformation they had been praying for. Those around them could see a peace that could not be explained by circumstances alone. My beloved child, never forget that God's timing is never careless. Every sunrise arrives exactly when it should. Every season changes according to His design. Seeds remain hidden